Díomh Cordia. Hello friends and welcome back to the Chroí Podcast. Elaine Gould is Anam Dum. My name is Elaine Doyle and it is with deep, heartfelt gratitude that I welcome you back to this sacred space that is Chroí, meaning the soil or earth of my heart. It's a place where I share my heart musings at this magical, intense time on planet Earth. So I'm really happy to be back here with you all, live, well not live, but from my sacred space in the southeast of Ireland, a place called Wexford. It is currently the 23rd of May 2026. We've just come through Tara season and Bealtaine, one of my favourite times of the year. So to honest get to meany arm lads, I'm really excited to be here to share what I've been moving through this past few weeks. And I have some beautiful elder flower tea. Excuse me, there'll be a lot clearing in my throat, I feel, for this episode. So yeah, allowing the spirit of the elder to be here with us as well. If you can, get out and get some elder flowers. I'm in the hottest probably part of Ireland, so maybe wherever you are in Ireland there isn't any, but I'd really recommend some. That and the hawthorn blossom. Hoping my microphone is close enough to me now, but sure, look, it'll be grand. Anyways, my Anam Cordia. Just allowing ourselves, as always, to drop in here. So just an invitation, brothers and sisters, wherever you are and whatever you are doing in this now moment, just allowing yourself to fully be here as much as you can. And if it feels good, to invite your soul to be here. That very ancient, wise part of you that is really wanting more airtime right now. Just inviting your soul to be here. And just that conscious awareness, that presence, just allowing yourself to come back into the present moment here. Maybe my word will bring you back from the distractions that we are constantly having to fight off in this world. And taking that Taurus Nefa, that sacred pilgrimage, the most important one you will ever do in this lifetime, from your head down into your beautiful sacred heart. Tá mé mo Chroí inis an talún Nefa. Tá mé mo Chroí inis. I am in my heart now on this sacred land. So just allowing yourself to be here as I share that which needs to be shared with you all at this time. And that which I need to share with my own body, right? I listen back to my own podcast because this is like spirit and my soul trying to bring my human self into alignment, to merge the soul wisdom with my human self. So this is as much for me as it is for ye, as always. I'm just trying to get my microphone right. It's just all the admin with the podcast, all this stuff that like I love. Anyways, okay, let's dig in. Okay, I know I said again that this was a momentous time on planet Earth. And I always say that. And I'm just reminding you all again, if my podcast reminds you of that alone, then I have done my job. I'm doing my job properly. Because I am deeply, this year especially, really in those soul spirit realms. And my soul is remembering the magnitude, more and more, the magnitude of the times that we are currently maneuvering. You know, it's nearly like, I said this to my friend, I've come back from the future with the perspective from the future of knowing what's really needed at this time for my lineage, the descendants yet to come, and the whole of humanity. I know what's needed. This is why I think I've loved Outlander so much, because, you know, there's times, if anyone has watched Outlander, where she travels back in time and she knows different battles that are going to happen from the future, and they're trying to use that wisdom to their advantage. And I think that's why that program resonated a lot, is because I feel like of a lot of us, time isn't linear, and we've come from future timelines with this wisdom that is going to really help us to have the courage to do what's needed right now. Because it's really, really, really momentous. I've used that word already, but like, it's really heart-wrenching work right now, this inner work. And having that kind of soul wisdom, not even from the future, but like the soul knowing, say, even that to get to where we need to get to as a race, there is some deep diving depths that we need to go to. And I know I've spent the last 3 years of my podcast talking about this, the spiritual journey, the healing and awakening journey. And, you know, I just want to say that I'm not, like, there is time where I switch off and watch Outlander or watch a movie and have crack and I dance for days to trad music and I switch off by nature, right? There has to be sacred balance when it comes to this, but the ultimate reason I'm here at this time, yes, to have fun and crack agus ceol, I mean, I'm Irish, but like, I'm here for a huge mission to heal as much as possible in my lineage, as humanly possible for one woman and her community. And I don't feel well if I'm not engaging in that mission in some capacity, whether it's internal or external. Mainly, a lot of the time over the last 6 years, it's internal, right? So we can't get away from this work, even if we try. I love it. I'm rising Pisces, you know, here for it. Like, I love it. So I think before I get into some of today's topics, it's just like knowing that you are, like, I was born for this. We were born for these times. And I know it's difficult. And I know that it is the level of separation and distortion within our romantic relationships and wombs and sacral chakras is a lot, right? And whatever you're moving through in your life right now, trust me, it's okay. It's okay. It's part of it.
Reminds me of that saying, what is it? What of the things that you think are obstacles are not obstacles, they're actually the part of the path, or they are the path. Everything in our lives, I believe, is here for our soul's growth, including the ancestral traumas in our lineage, our parents, our beloveds, our children, everything. So yeah, that reminder, you know. What else on that? yeah, just being extra compassionate and loving and soft on yourself. You know, you're doing amazing, better than you could ever imagine. Your soul is so happy that you're here awake at this momentous time. Um, and yeah, that's where I wanted to start. Or go to. It's like the topics that I'm about to talk about, right? That came up for me during the Altana and Tara season. I realised that this stuff has been coming up again and again and again for years, definitely over the past 6 years in particular, right? Um, because of my background as a social worker and a therapist, my work is very much trauma focused. Trauma focused. So we're trauma focus is when we're very aware of the severing and the fragmentation that trauma has brought the human vessel. And when we're coming from a trauma and focused practice, we have this compassion and understanding that these things do not heal in one ceremony, two ceremony, or three ceremonies, as my friend Aoife and I were talking about recently, right? This is a day in, day out, lifelong practice because we are and I know I've said this before, but I will remind my own soul of this, that we are the most separated generation in a long, long time. And you're thinking, oh no, my parents were, right? Oh, they're more disconnected than I am. Yes, but our generation is embodying all of their separation plus extra separation from this life of like porn, for example, and technology. And a lot of us in this lineage or in this generation are not just are embodying like hundreds of years and thousands of years of separation. I really believe that our generation are taking on all of it, right? And our parents did the really hard job of really passing on a lot of it to us, so we would be the ones to heal it. So, like, don't get caught up in that Instagram view that like there's a workshop out there that you can do that is 10 steps to healing and, you know, living your best life. Not. The work I do is very slow, very devotional. It's long term. And I'll be passing on the baton to my children, you know? Um, and this thing, just because, you know, we think we can like do a 6-week workshop or a 6-month workshop, or that we get a download on something, that's it, it's embodied. And we see a lot of that online, right? People have something that really helps them and they know something logically, and then they feel like they can bring others through that, but they actually haven't really embodied it or went through the sacred initiations that we would have went through in other lifetimes that were took years, you know? Years. For example, here in Ireland, to become a druid, it was like 20 years of training. So just keeping that in mind before we get into today's topic. And I'm going to read out some posts I wrote a couple of years ago. And this shows me and demonstrates that point where we can get a download of something, but it can take years to embody. Years to embody. So be patient again and compassionate to yourself and your loved ones, especially your romantic partner, if there's a lot of fragmentation and trauma there. And at the same time, and I'm sure I'll talk about this, is the sort of truth that's needed when we have this level of separation within our beings as well. I could be here for hours. I could be here for hours. Let me just take some tea. Okay, so for people who don't know, Taurus season, which, you know, lies when the Altana happens, the start of the summer. Taurus My son is in Taurus, by the way. I turned 38 on the 23rd of April this year. I feel about 25, and at the same time, I feel like I'm about 5,670. Anyways, so obviously, because my sun's sign is in Taurus, a lot comes up at this time. Taurus is related to security, stability, food, sensuality, home, structure, groundedness, rootedness, connected, working with your hands, connected with the plants, all these sorts of things, right? So every year around this time, the same stuff comes up for me. And just reflecting yourself on maybe what came up for you this Boughton season. And just to say as well, I wrote about this on Facebook and Instagram yesterday. Just a little side note on the Boughton energy. I usually am out and about in community at this time of year, which I really missed. I had some interactions, but not very much, because the intensity of this Taurus season was really, really huge, really, really intense. And a lot of integration from the last 6 years, and a lot of just stillness, just feeling the sun on my bones and really enjoying good food. So just the simplicity at this time of year, to actually have the presence, time, space, capacity to be with what this portal was showing me. So my dad said to me recently, we need to know when to hold something and when to fold it. And I realised that with pilgrimages and ceremonies as well, knowing, okay, there's not actually energy there for that. Just sit and be with the energies that are present. I know I talk about this a lot, but it's hard. Like when you want to have a bit of crack and with Kyo and a bit of community. Luckily, my connection to my menstrual cycle and my bleed in particular makes me highly attuned to the energies. I know when it's time to hold and fold now. Hold is to be out, hold something, and to do it, and fold it is to just feel like, no, I'm going to fold up who I once was and just be with the new version of me, or be in complete surrender to the energies, which is a brave thing in a patriarchal world. Okay. I love that it takes me about 20 minutes to actually get into the topic. Because I can't talk about these subjects without background. And that's what we see a lot on Instagram. Things are out of context. And yeah, we have to show the bigger picture sometimes, especially on topics such as sexuality, which is something I'm really going to touch on here. Okay, so we just moved through. We had a full moon in Scorpio, and then we came into a new moon in Taurus last Saturday. I don't know, around the 15th. Oh, May. Oh my goddess. I don't think I've ever, I say this a lot, but that was really an explosive new moon for me. I felt like somebody had taken my human self away, and all was left was my soul. And I was seeing the distortion in my own consciousness and my own life so well, so easily. It was quite traumatic. I was literally just seeing my own bullshit, like the goggles had been taken off. And I seeing things within me and within my close relationships that were probably very obvious for a long time, but I was blind to it. Seeing a lot of unworthiness within me, where I'd been settling and calling it stability. And it's not stable, really, a lot of stuff about financial security. So lots of different things come up, right, this Boughton the season. Food as well. I'm not going to go into detail on everything. I just wanted to kind of quickly mention some of that, just in case you've been moving through that as well. Home, the sense of home within ourselves and in the external. Anyways, just wanted to mention that new moon was huge. And I did see an astrologist say there was something happened with Uranus and Neptune and lots of other astrology stuff that I can't remember. And he said it was a rare astrological event, a very rare astrological event at this new moon. And I felt it in the very depths of my being. I had bled just before that, so it was perfect. I was shedding to be reborn under this new moon. And it's important for me to say this because we can spend weeks and months integrating a new moon like that. I read a post today on the new moon. I was like, okay, more waves of what was happening for me and what changes I really need to make going forward, like, you know? And I'm just going to put my hands up and say, like, I don't have it figured out. Like, my human self doesn't. Like, my soul knows the way, but like, I have a lot of catching up to do with my soul, I feel. But I'm not hard on myself anymore, which has taken years to get to. There's just like, I suppose it's that I've got my little wounded inner child right beside me. And what she doesn't need is, you're doing it wrong. Hurry up. She needs lots of like, it's okay. You're going to get through this. You were born for this. You'll figure it out. Patience, trust. So even at times, I feel like I'm completely not in integrity with some of my, not in integrity, but like, let's say not in my full soul resonance with certain things. I know I'll get there. And I know I've come really far. Like really, really, really far. I've come so far. And that's what she needs. She needs just love and compassion. And her loved ones need that when they're transversing a lot of separation and trauma as well. It's the only way really is love and forgiveness. Now, under this new moon, the sword of truth came out massively for me, as it has been since the new moon in Aries. So we can be really, really, really like stern and boundaried and have sacred rage. And at the same time, we can be soft and forgiving. Okay. I could do a whole podcast about how I exactly do that, but that's a topic for another day. Yeshua said, I'm here to bring the sword of truth, not the sword of peace. So we have to give ourselves exorcisms before we give others. My friend reminded me of that, before we give other people exorcisms of truth when it comes to the separation and distortion within their body. So, okay. I'll stop beating around the bush now and I'll make sure that this is still recording, yeah. Okay, so a topic that has been massively, I would say, in my community the last few weeks is distorted sexual energy and sacred sexuality. And this would come up under Taurus season because the full moon in Scorpio is the opposite sign to Taurus. I don't know if I'm using the right astrology terms, but I'll just say it as I know it, or feel I know it, or as I understand it. Scorpio is the opposite sign to Taurus, and Scorpio has that like sexual shadow energy that can come up. And then Taurus can kind of balance out that shadow sexuality, where more groundedness and experiencing pleasure and sensuality in other ways other than sex. So actually, for years at this time of year, stuff comes up for me around sacred sexuality. Okay. I'm not sure what exactly is going to come true today about this. I just have the intention to be here and to show up and share some musings on it. But I just really, is the most important thing, lads. Most important thing to keep in mind or to know or to feel when we're talking about sexuality. The last thing we want to do here is to bring shame. to it, to bring shame, further shame to our sexuality, because we're never going to heal the sexual shadows if we bring shame to it. And that's what the powers that be want us to do. They want us to engage in shadowy sexual stuff and then feel ashamed about it, and then this perpetuating cycle, right? Okay. So I'm going to start off by sharing some posts I wrote many years ago on Instagram. And the reason I'm talking about this is this is probably one of the most distorted aspects of our humanity. It's one of the most distorted aspects of our humanity, sexuality is. And we cannot be on a healing path or a sacred remembrance path or a spiritual path, I believe, without going into the sexual trauma and distortion. It's completely one, right? Because our sexual energy is our life force, creative energy. So we can't talk about, my friend reminded me of this, we cannot talk about the sacred and leave out sex. Because think about it, how were we conceived? Every human being is conceived through sex. It's how we come to be on this planet. It is who we are, right? Yeah, this is completely intertwined with who we are. Okay. So I'm just going to read out something. Yeah. What else on that? Yeah. No, that's it on that before I read this out. So just to say as well, I don't spend much time on social media anymore. But it's very, very different than what it was like a couple of years ago. I'm definitely aware of that. There's just so much more content, so much more people stepping into being healers and space holders. So there's just a lot of content out there right now. I received these downloads not from listening to anybody else's content or seeing anything online. This was something that I just remembered because I was celibate at the time. So it's important for me to say that because it's very easy to read something online and then to kind of just go with it. But this is the experience for a lot of us who are on the path and have went celibate for a time for a period of time. We just realize that when we stop engaging in that distorted sexual energy, we realize the sacredness of it. Okay, so this was December 2022, right? Okay. I have to read it from my phone because obviously I don't remember. Sexual energy is the very source of life itself. It is the divine within us. It is our life force energy. When the powers that be shamed our sexual energy, they knew that controlling our relationship with this vital life force energy was the same as controlling our power. Sexual energy is not just related to sex, it's our creativity, our passion, our inner fire and purpose. It's the very thing that keeps us alive. To utilize this powerful, vital energy through sex, to truly meet the divine through the union of man and woman or lovers, we must remember that sex is holy and sacred. Trust, love, and consciousness must be present for sex to be held within its truth. The truth that the act of sex is to birth new consciousness and love into the world. To help us get closer to the divine, the Hyrios Gamos. Now is the time for us to heal our relationship with our sexual energy, to clear and heal the shame and guilt that has been put upon it, and unleash this vital life force into every cell of our being, while remembering the sacredness of sex, of merging with another in trust and consciousness. So I know there's a lot in those words. Sex is holy and sacred. Sex is holy and sacred. And let me tell you, lads, there is a lot of stuff online, on Instagram and social media, that is completely distorted. And it's, when I say online, spiritual people talking about sex in this free-for-all, orgy, open relationships. There is a lot of shadowy sexual distortion being advertised out there. And again, I don't want to shame this. I'm just here to bring what I feel to be true to the table, and you can take what you want and leave the rest. I can only share what my womb and body and soul knows about this. And I cannot talk about sexual energy and not talk about my womb, because it's my connection to my womb that brought through this wisdom or this remembrance, right? So it's the connection to the womb for women. I remember I did a workshop in 2020 with an Irish woman. I can't remember her name, Jenny, maybe. And one of the practices we had to do was to yoni gaze in a mirror. So that first real communication, not first, but like that really deep connection with my womb, my yoni, I realized, I will never forget the moment. I was like, oh my God, I have been not asking for her consent when it comes to sex. I have been violating her again and again and again in the name of sexual freedom and sexual sovereignty. And that was a big wake-up call. It was a lot of grief. There was a lot of sadness at that time when you connect, like when you really ask permission. Like, I've talked about this before. I could talk about it for the rest of my life. The womb being the oracle. And this is not for every single person on the path, I get that. But if you're to really listen to your womb and really see her as the oracle, you're going to get a lot of no's. You're going to get a lot of sordid truths. You're going to be hugely brought into integrity and shown where you're out of integrity in your sexual energy, in your work, in your relationships, in the entirety of your life. It's a very devotional path that I have obviously been brought onto. It was in 2019. I went to a womb wisdom retreat, changed my life. Okay, so that was the start of it for me. And luckily it was locked down and all those things at that time. So, I mean, I hadn't been very sexually active anyway since my awakening in 2018, let's say. Without getting into my history in detail, I suppose I was one of these women who wasn't in this place of like celibacy in my 20s. You know, I didn't practice no sex before marriage or anything, let's just say that. And I wanted to rebel against the fucking fucked up sexual shame and distortion in my country of birth, which was Ireland, right? So, and I'm going to read out another post I did about this. So you have in Ireland, and I know it's not the same in every country, but in Ireland, lads, like women got locked up in Magdalene laundries for getting pregnant outside of marriage. This is one of the darkest parts of our history in this country, and the stuff I worked in adoption and I seen records from that time. What happened here was absolutely heart-wrenching. I don't even know how to put words to it. Most heart-wrenching stuff happened here in relation to distorted sexual energy because of the Roman Catholic Church. So when you grow up in that, you know, my idea was, well, I have sexual sovereignty and I want to rebel at that and I can do what I want sexually. You know, I want to have many lovers and be strong in my own sovereignty because I no longer am going to get locked up for that. So that's why a lot of people, maybe in our generation, you know, I'm in my 30s, kind of went the complete opposite way of what the church was telling us to do because that was so fucked up. Like, there's sacred sexuality, and then there's the shame and the distortion that the Catholic Church have put on it. So, like, we're having to strip back everything. And I was talking to my priestess teacher, Deirdre Wadding, about this recently. It's like, we had what was put on us in Ireland with the church, and then what we put on ourselves, and neither is true. You know, this idea that like sexual freedom and sexual sovereignty and all this. But that also wasn't true either. Having this, you know, uh, sexual freedom, I'm going to call it, is the best word I can put on it. But I think you know what I mean there. And the most important thing, no matter what you're doing now with your sexual energy, let's not just put shame on it and let's not just make it wrong. I'm just sharing my story with it and what feels true for me. We really want to leave shame outside and kick it out. We do also want to look for truth though, you know, for truth. Before I read out the post I wrote, I suppose one of the reasons I feel confident to talk about this is because I've experienced both polarities then. I've experienced this celibacy and deep womb purification and sacred sexuality downloads. So I've experienced that, but I've also experienced the complete opposite in this lifetime, let me tell you, right? And that kind of gives me wisdom and reflections on what actually feels true going forward, right? And again, the number one thing here that pulls me into the truth is the womb and knowing what feels right. You see, I was saying this to my friend because I've been in conversation with a good few of my friends about this sacred sexuality in the last few weeks. When a woman is disconnected, or even a man, but I can only talk about women because I am a woman and I work mainly with women. When you're not disconnected to your body or your intuition or your womb, you're disconnected from what feels good and what doesn't feel good. So now I'll see some say like, oh, a tantra workshop on pleasure and sexuality. And I mean, there's some of that stuff that is good, like, and connected, but it depends on the people running it and the intention and what they view sacred sexuality. But say it isn't right. I know a million miles off because I'm connected to my womb and intuition. That does not feel right. And the only way we're going to discern what sacred sexuality means to us, or what sexual distortion is if we're deeply connected to that oracle part of ourselves, that intuition and our bodies, because the body knows the score. That's where the intuition is. And that's what happened that first time I really connected with my yoni. During that practice, I was like, oh shit. She didn't want a lot of this stuff that I was engaging in. She has been violated by me. Because if it is sex, yeah, you physically consented. What part of you consented though? Was it your womb? Was it your yoni? Or was it your very wounded part of yourself that was actually looking for intimacy and connection rather than sex, right? Yeah. And that reminds me as well, a very, very life-changing experience on this topic as well was here in Wexford a couple of years ago. I went to Anaya Sophia, I think her name is Alethea Sophia now. Many of you may know her. She lives in France. She's an English woman. Her father's Irish. I met her here in Ireland. She did a workshop here in Wexford, obviously. And she was running a well-known program that she's associated with, which is Sacred Body Awakening. And it's like sacred touch. And I did it twice with her actually. And I realized, lads, that when people were touching me, not sexually at all, like I can't describe it. It was like energy healing, but there was at times they were touching your body in a really sacred, holy way. I realized that all those times that I had sex with people, a lot of the time I didn't need sex. I needed this. I needed touch and intimacy. And that's where I realized I had been seeking in the wrong places when it came to sex, or I had the wrong intention, or I had a separated, disconnected intention going into sex. So that's a really important point. And that opens a whole can of worms. That opens a whole can of worms. So I'm going to just take a little breather there.
So just to briefly mention what I said there, opening the can of worms, right? What does that mean? When I say, I was craving touch rather than sex, that can bring us into early developmental trauma, where we didn't receive enough touch and co-regulation from our caregivers. And it can bring up, dysregulated nervous systems because of the lack of co-regulation. So this is really, 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 really deep work when we're looking at why we maybe have engaged in what now feels like distorted sexual practices or energy. This will bring you into your core wounds, your core childhood trauma, as I said, developmental trauma. This goes back to in the womb, our birth, and how, if we were breastfed, and what kind of co-regulation did we co-sleep, like all these things like breastfeeding, co-sleep, and all these things really helped to regulate a child or a baby. So this is will bring you back to your core stuff, which it did for me. So we can't really talk about sexual distortion or sacred sexuality without getting into our core wounds. And when I hear people talk about sexual freedom and sovereignty and free for all kind of sex, I'm like, have you looked at your core wounds there? This is why we have to be very, very, very discerning. Where are these teachings coming from? It's like people say, I'm channeling God and God told me to do this, right? If you haven't healed your traumatized inner child, they rule the show. And the chances are you're actually channeling the woundedest part of yourself. I remember Matt Kahn doing a video on that years ago, and I was like, absolutely. And that's kind of where my social work background comes in. I know that this unconscious, subconscious work, I think Carl Jung says that, if you do not look at the subconscious, it will rule your life, and you'll call it faith. Actually, no, it's the wounded part of yourself. So, this is why this is a very complex topic that I feel like I'm going to get people on my podcast. I really, really want to get my friend on this podcast to talk more about it and to share even more of my story again, because it's very hard to sum it all up. in one episode. There's so many layers to this. There is so many layers to this. And again, the reminder to leave shame outside. Like, it's kind of like the cake. If you're going to have the cake, have it guilt-free. It's the same with sex. If you're going to engage in it, in whatever capacity, do it guilt-free if you can, you know? Interestingly, and I'm sure I've quoted before, Louise Hay, she talks about the emotional psychological cause of diseases, and when she mentions sexually transmitted diseases or infections, she said it's actually sexual shame and guilt that can attract these things, and we don't want to do that, right? We want to just be very kind and compassionate to ourselves, no matter what our history with it is. Am I drilling that home? I've had to do that with myself and people in my life. Okay. We cannot underestimate, and we cannot, like, there is sacred teachings out there around why there was messages of wisdom around not having any sex before marriage. There is a sacred teachings that are nothing to do with religions, but religions have taken these teachings and skewed them and used it to shame people when it comes to sex. And I'm not for that, right? So, for example, I watched a movie recently, and they were in like Kentucky in America, and it was like a really, really, really strict Christian family and church. And because the young girl as a teenager was, you know, hormones were going everywhere. There's libido, there's sex drive. Well, there's hormones, really. That's at the basis of it. Like, the woman is, what's really happening is the woman is actually having all these hormones because of her cycle, the strength of her cycle at that age, and she's actually preparing to become mother. And it's a very vulnerable time for teenagers, young people, when all these hormones are getting everywhere, and there's no sacred rite of passage of how do we honor these thresholds and these hormones and these feelings. And if it's not dealt with, it can be a very dangerous time then for young people. But in this Christian church, in this movie, sexual desire or hormones or energy was seen as Satan or the devil, right? And then you see yourself as dirty and that the devil has you. And that's completely wrong as well. You know, this isn't about shaming our hormones or like, I mean, when a woman's ovulating, there is a desire to make love because that's when she can actually conceive a child. It's how we manage and meet these feelings and energies within ourselves. We bring them into the sacred, or they are sacred, but how do we be in prayer with those rather than just explode it everywhere, right? So we didn't have any of these thresholds as young people or adults even around how to be in right relationship with your life force energy, which is of course your sacral energy, your sexual energy. So it's like, it's not our fault, but yeah, it's our responsibility to bring it back into truth. And another story in America, I can't remember that girl's name, in Salt Lake City, where she was, I know I'm going to touch on some dark things, but we can't separate this from sexual energy. She was kidnapped from her home and raped by this like guy who said he was channeling God and all. It was really dark shit. And luckily she was found and reunited with her family. But because in her church she knew that, well, she was told that sexual energy was, or having sex before marriage was wrong, and that she felt taint. Even though she was raped, she felt like her family would disown her because she wasn't a virgin anymore, even though she had been violated. And I thought, this is fucked up, right? Luckily, obviously, she got healing around that, but it's like, that's where the powers that be want us to be in shame, especially as women around it, when it's not even our fault, especially for a young girl like that who was assaulted and raped. And there's many movies I've watched. I watch movies to take me on a pilgrimage. I only watch movies that I'm going to spiritually learn something from. And there's a lot of good movies out there that show the absolute violation and rape and pillaging of women over the centuries. And in some movies it's like, oh yeah, and she brought the man through the devil through her body and her good looks, and she seduced him. And that's what happened in Ireland. The women were locked up while the men who got these women pregnant were let loose. They were allowed to be free. So the women have held a lot of the guilt and shame when it comes to distorted sexual energy. So we need to know that, like, even if we weren't raped, and I mean, the sad scenario is, lads, most women in my friendship group have been some way violated or raped in their life, right? So whether we were raped or we thought we were given consent, like when I look back now, I wasn't really given consent. I was violated in those times. And it's a dark thing to have to start to see in the world. Yeah, I mean, I could go on a rant there, like the amount of inappropriate things that have happened to me with men over my lifetime. I could write a book on it. And I know also men have been violated and abused as well, but the feminine, when it comes to sex, it feels like a lot of the shame and guilt was really put on us. So this work really, 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 you have to start with, again, I'm going to keep saying it, compassion and softness. Compassion and softness. Those examples I use with those women, it's like, of course it's not your fault. Of course you're not tainted. This older man raped you, you know? So it's very important to, lead with compassion here. Because even if we are, my age, and we think, there's a part of us that thinks we're like, yes, this sexual practices that I'm taking part in is like consensual and it feels good. And then down the line, it really doesn't feel good and you realise you were in your shadow. We still have to lead with compassion because our wounded part of ourselves was leading that show, leading the way, was ruling the show. What was it? Yeah, what's the word there? Yeah. And we have to be then compassionate with that part of ourselves. So there's many layers to it. Many layers. And Queen Maeve comes in here a lot. I've really been feeling her energy this past month. So people who don't know, Queen Maeve is one of the goddesses here in Ireland. She was from Connacht, and the stories around her around sexual sovereignty, right? Sexual sovereignty. There is stories that she had many lovers. I don't know whether that's true or not, because that's what was written down by people a long time after she was here. But my connection with Maeve is like, what she's really been helping me with is sexual sovereignty and sexual de-shaming sexuality. So no matter what's happened to us, not bringing shame into it. And sexual sovereignty now for a woman who's gone through the womb initiations and who has received the messages of what sacred sexuality is. Sexual sovereignty now looks like celibacy. And, even one day, hopefully when I do get married, sex is a sacred ceremony and practice and is engaged with a lot of consciousness and deep trust and commitment to one another. Marriage basically. because it's the union of two souls. It's huge. It's a huge thing to do with somebody. I have been for about 6 years now, very careful who I would engage with in an intimate way like that. So that's sexual sovereignty to me. I'm not here to do what my grandmothers did. And my grandmother would have talked to me about this, was like, we were here to please our husband. And when he said we were to have sex, we had sex. And then there was like however many children. I'm not here to do that. That's not my job as a woman, right? That is not my job. I'm here to pull sacred sexuality into its highest vibration and its highest purity and its highest, I don't know what the word is, potentiality. That's, I feel like as women, we have to be the ones to really hold the integrity there. Because we have, so you've got one night stands, right? And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to do one night stands, or I'm not going to have sex with anyone unless I'm in a committed relationship. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so there's committed relationships. I'm only having sex, or I'm only being intimate if I'm married or I'm in a long-term relationship. And we think it's over and done with then. Oh no, sisters and brothers, it's just the start of it. Which I experienced in my relationships is, that's when it comes up more. Because even though you're in love with your partner, both of you or one of you might be holding a lot of sexual trauma, a lot of distorted sexual energy that then has to come up to be healed and purified. So that's a whole journey in itself, right? That woman I mentioned earlier, Alethea Sophia, she has a book called Sacred Sexual Union, and there's a whole chapter about how both people, before making love, being celibate for a while to clear the distorted sexual energy. What do I mean by what? Like, for example, what distorted sexual energy needs to be cleared? Well, porn. I think we are one of the most sexually violated generations because of porn. It is the most saddest thing to be present. One of the saddest things to be present in the world right now, because it is so distorted and it really gets into the human psyche and body. And a lot of people, like, it's very easy to know if a partner has watched porn by how they're engaging in the sexual practices. And our generation were just like bombarded with it through movies and social media. Like, still, there's a lot of pornographic images on Instagram, and so that's what I mean by that distortion can be done in your relationship. Even if it's like years ago, that will come up. All the layers of distorted sexual energy will come up. Sexual abuse is another layer that will come up in intimate long-term relationships if that is present in one of the people in the relationship. Again, was rife in Ireland, sexual abuse. We know in the Catholic Church, in the stay homes, priests, nuns, family members. So you see how this topic really is dense. Like, it really gets into that really dark layer in humanity. And like, I do a lot of one-to-one work with people in Ireland and people from all over the world, but especially in Ireland, a lot of my clients are Irish, obviously. Most of my clients had some sort of family sexual abuse, whether it was them or someone close to them. And that plays into how we now practice sex. If you were sexually violated or raped, we can still take on that imprint and practice sex in that way, which I know is fucked up, but it's like, it's all we know. And I actually could cry, because that just breaks my heart, that the thing that brings humans into the world has been so violated. We've been so violated and raped and hijacked. Predominantly, one of the main ways is through our sexuality and sexual energy. So there is a lot of grief around this topic for me and a lot of people on the path, especially if there is that sexual abuse or trauma, especially as a child. Like, the innocence and purity has been stripped from you, and when I think of a lot of the spiritual teachers out there that are really talking about spiritual or sacred sexuality, there was sexual trauma there as a child, sexual abuse. A lot of us who are healers and light workers have some sort of sexual trauma or abuse, because again, that's what will wake us up to the opposite energy, unfortunately. But again, it's just having a lot of support in your life to get through that. Because now I'm like, you go into the grief and you feel it, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Like, I promise there is. So, like, when we have sex, are we actually doing it in its most pure form? Or are we doing a pornographic sexual abuse replay? Going to take a breath there. So I know that is maybe some heavy stuff to think about. And I'm going to repeat it again. Are we actually practicing sex in its purest form, or are we reenacting pornographic imagery or content or sexual abuse? Are we just replaying or reconstructing that view of sex? Yeah. It's a deep path, and part of me is not jealous, but like the older generations, that there was some level of purity around it, because there wasn't porn and there wasn't social media, and there was this practice of no sex before marriage, But even back then in recent generations, there still was a lot of sexual abuse. So there's many layers to it. But it's our generation now. Each one of us have the ability to bring it back to its purity. And I have a long journey with that still, because of these imprints, and seeing that within myself this past week since the new moon. And it was fairly traumatic to see what imprints were still in me around it. But also, like, really excited for this deeper purification of the womb and the sacred chakra and the sexual energy. Like, of course, when you have deeper insight and deeper purification, I find it exciting to go on a deeper path to embodying more sacred sexuality. I love this work, What else do I do want to read out the post I wrote a couple of years ago as well. Yeah, like, again, each person's experience of truth of this will look different. For me, I don't even like calling it sex. It's making love, because I feel like that's what it is meant to be about. It's not about pleasure. It's not about the physicality of it. Really, it's about love, unifying love between two people, and creating maybe life from that place of love, and creating new consciousness and union with the divine. Like any ceremony, if we really do it in a sacred way, we'll feel closer to God through sex, through lovemaking. That's what feels true. The truest for me is it's a sacred, holy unification between man, woman, or whatever your sexual orientation. I'm just going to say man and woman because that's mine. to unify with our Creator, to have a sacred spiritual experience. And I've had that. And it's like, wow, it's possible. The ingredients for that are many things, but like trust and consciousness in a relationship, love, commitment, and like, yeah, true love. This is why, like, one night stands and all this, I wish I could go back and change my decisions. So that is the right time for me to now read this post that I wrote in 4th of April 2023. So it's nearly, just over 3 years ago. And I start, if there was one piece of advice I could give my younger self, it would be this. Sex is sacred. Your womb is sacred. Your womb is a portal to the other world. It is the Holy Grail, the creator of all of life, the seat of all your power and creativity. Honor it that way, protect it, keep it sacred. Okay, 17-year-old self, you want sexual autonomy. You want to enjoy the sexual freedom that our female ancestors did not have. In brackets, women in Ireland were literally locked up and abused and tortured for having sex outside marriage. So yes, my generation is healing a lot when it comes to this. Freeing ourselves from those shackles. However, younger me, go do this, but can you do it with more consciousness and love and trust in your relationships? For if not, you are actually going to spend much time clearing and healing your womb from all the energies that penetrated you. Energies that were in no way worthy of entry to your Holy Grail. These energies not only took your sexual creative life force energy, but left you with their unhealed, unlooked at trauma that ended up lingering around your energy field for a long time. During sex, the souls merge into one. This is serious in the laws of energy. To become one. Are you ready to take on that person's entire energetic field? To be connected with them for perhaps a very long time, whether you want to be or not? Gosh, I wish someone had told me this when I was young. And I pray that the younger generation, both men and women, remember the holiness of sex. I'm not saying no sex before marriage here, even though I can see actually the holiness of that now. But coming together at least as two conscious souls who deeply understand the deep sacredness of sex, and to bring much love and consciousness to it as possible. I really feel deeply that sex, sacred sexual union, is the greatest gift we have on this earth plane. And we are only just beginning to remember what that is and how deeply it needs to be honoured. I know this is a big conversation, especially here in Ireland, and there is much more to be said, but would love to hear your thoughts. So that was the post 3 years ago. Wow. Yeah, so just allowing that to land. And I, too, love that reminder for myself and my soul. And I'm like, yes, this is truth. That rings true for me. It's a sacred, energetic exchange. That there must be love and consciousness present. There must be love and consciousness present. And it reminds me of something I said earlier on. If you're going to have sex in whatever way, then do it guilt-free. And I'm like, well, as long as you're not married, and if you're cheating on your wife, then guilt needs to come in, so you'll maybe stop doing it. Or, do it guilt-free if you feel like you're in integrity with your own soul and the people in your life. You know? So that was important to say. There are rules. There are, you know, when it comes to intimate relationships and commitments to one another and monogamy. So just wanted to say that. And yeah, this is what I wanted to say. So I wrote that in 2023, right? I hadn't been in a relationship for nearly 2 years. So I would have been celibate for nearly 2 years. And it is easy when we're not in a relationship to be celibate, obviously. I mean, yeah, you could go out and have a one night stand, but I was never going to do that again. I was never going to ever go near a man again unless there was love and consciousness present. I needed someone who was spiritually aware and on the path. I wasn't letting any person near my energy field ever again. And that was a huge leap for me from where I'd been in my 20s. Sexual freedom bullshit. Not bullshit, sorry. I'm judging and I shouldn't be judging myself. So I'm sorry. Don't want to be putting any shame here. Only when we're connected with the womb women will we really know what feels good and what doesn't. By the way, I know I've said that before, but it was a couple of months later, if not a month later, that I met a man that I fell in love with. And as much as I tried to stay celibate and practice sacred sexuality, I there was a lot of layers to look at, and there still is a lot of layers to look at. In my recent relationships with men, there's a lot of layers within me to look at of what distorted sexual energy has been imprinted in me and is still in me. As I said, just because you're in love with someone and you're in a devoted relationship doesn't mean that there's not loads of distorted sexual energy there. And I know it because it feels not good in my body, right? But there's just patience and trust with that path, and having a loving partner who you can share the darkest secrets with to bring the sex into purity, or to bring it into ceremony. So to me, yeah, it's like relationships in general. You think you're all healed and spiritual, and then you're in a romantic relationship, you're like, oh shit. And it's the same, you know, sex is going to bring up the same. You think it's healed until you're actually trying to practice sacred sexuality, and then you realise there might be some demons in the closet. And that's okay. We just have to devote ourselves to it. I think for me, and I touched on this earlier on with the touch, I've mentioned that I've been working with a somatic practitioner this year, and when the body is in a state of flight or fight or a stress response, which my body has been and still is at certain times, or yeah, I won't go into all of that, we crave sex because it regulates us, or can help regulate the body or bring us into our body, right? I think Eckhart Tolle says that we crave sex to feel that aliveness within our body, because we're disconnected from the body. So we over rely on sex in distorted ways, which isn't sustainable, because, well, it's not sustainable if you want to be practicing sacred sexuality, because I have to be able to bring myself into my own body to feel that aliveness through presence and regulation and all these somatic practices I've been doing, because only then can I actually practice sex for what it's actually meant for, not this like crutch that these are only things I can bring myself. Does that make sense? Like I used to need sex to help regulate me and ground me, because I was so dysregulated and disassociated from my body. And you could call that a really high sex drive. I used to say, oh, well, I have a really high libido. no, I was actually really dysregulated and needed that as a crutch to bring me into my body. So what is actually going on there if we have a high sex drive? Maybe, maybe there is a justified reason for that, like we're ovulating all the time, or we really want a child, or whatever it is. I'm not here to analyze everyone else's situation. I can only analyze my own. But what I do know is, since I have been doing somatic work and the somatic practices, I'm not needing sex as much. And very rarely, in fact, actually, because like the time has to be right and there has to be presence to bring it into sacredness. And as men and women, we're going through many different cycles. We're not always going to be feeling like we have that spaciousness for that ceremony. And like, if I'm being completely honest, I think the real purity and ceremony of sacred sexuality and how it actually can be, I don't think I've ever experienced in this lifetime yet. But I have full faith that I will. Because there's just I have to be realistic about where my human self has been given all this sexual imprints. But it just feels really good not to rely on it in that way anymore, and to be in integrity with my own sexual energy and my own sexual sovereignty. So I didn't even realise there was this many layers connected to it until I was in close romantic relationship, devoted relationship, and then it all comes to light. Is there anything else on that? I feel like there was something else. Yeah, I suppose it takes a commitment from your partner as well to want to be somewhat interested in walking the path of sacred sexuality. But most conscious men that I've met, whether they're friends or a romantic partner, are practicing celibacy or semen retention, or you're eventually kind of brought onto the path. It's amazing to see the amount of men that are really, really, really embodying and practicing this now. It's out there and it's possible for us to bring that into relationships with our partners. Yeah, I mean, I could do whole episodes on regulating the nervous system so we're not so over-reliant on sex and all these things, but just touching on these subjects I feel is enough for now. There's a lot to it, friends. Also, something to mention here is conscious conception and birthing. When I lived in Avondale Retreat in Wicklow in 2021, I was really lucky to be around women who were really passionate about home birthing and free birthing, and I had a massive awakening into how birth has been robbed. Sacred birth has been robbed from us as women, and our power and sovereignty to birth our own children. And then I was really brought into conscious conception, and this isn't just about conscious conception in the capacity of okay, I want a baby, we're going to have sex now to conceive. It's about sacred sexuality in terms of conscious conception. It's and I know this is why I don't have children, because I needed to walk through this initiation of sacred sexuality first. I know my children, the spirit babies around me that want to come through me, are calling me into sacred sexuality and conscious conception and birth in its most purest, sovereign way, or power. So I just I know I'm being called into this, and if we are passionate about, birth, we have to be also connected to how we conceive and how we birth. It starts with sex, obviously. That's how we conceive and that's how we birth children. So for me, it's many of us have got conceived in, a myriad of ways, and there's no right or wrong way here. Like, if a child is meant to come into the world, it will come in, and I don't want to like judge or tarnish any ways of conception, but I'm just speaking about me, how I've been called into it. And I just feel like I'm moving towards this threshold that, like, okay, I can see myself now unifying with my beloved, with my partner in the most beautiful, purifying way, and a child will be conceived in that way. There's no very distorted sexual imprint there, and we're calling in the purity of sex to conceive a child. You know, that is really important for me. And I know, again, it's what the next generation are calling us into, is to like redefine birth, death and sex and conception. It's actually the core of what we're trying to heal, I feel. Yeah, it's huge work. Like, I mean, when I birth my first child, there'll just be like a book written on what I've had to maneuver and what I've been initiated into just to be able to do that in a sacred way. Anyways, friends, yeah, there's loads more, and I'm sure I will be back sharing more musings on this. It's a huge topic. It's massive. And today's episode, I really just wanted to share what was really present in my heart about it and my womb, and to bring through some of the soul wisdom that my soul has received, but is still maneuvering to embody with the density that this feminine body has held. Just the reality, and that's okay. This is what we're here to do. We're here to go into it, heal it, feel it, move it, recreate, purify, and birth this whole new earth. So thank you everyone for being here, for receiving my musings and my word and my story. Yeah, really, really thank you. I've touched on some sensitive topics today around, you know, abuse and sexual distortion. So, you know, if what I would recommend, if you are feeling vulnerable or it's triggered some past stuff, reaching out to your therapist, or reaching out to me, reaching out to somebody and talking about it, because these are really heavy topics. So yes, please feel free to contact me. My details are on my website, triplespiralhealing.com, and I do offer one-to-one work in relation to sexual trauma and abuse. And there's obviously lots of people out there that also offer support in relation to this, so you don't have to walk this path alone. I definitely am not walking this path alone. I have a tribe of amazing women and men around me that are helping me to purify and clear, to come back to the truth and the divinity of who we are and our natural blueprint. So make sure you call on your tribe, and I am here supporting you from the outside. Thank you again to all my subscribers. Your support here really means a lot. And thank you to everyone who just tunes in and listens. It makes me accountable to show up and to be here. So yeah, I'm sure I'll be back with more musings soon. And yeah, there's some good weather coming to the Celtic lands. So get out, have a bit of fun, enjoy yourself, have a bit of crack, and yeah. Slán go fóill, bye for now. Anam Carja. Take care. Gramor agus Banach. Oh, Aaron.